it was the chopped in half name, and
Yeah.
the first part became the middle name.
Yeah.
And the Jora was, no one in my family seems to know if the name was chopped back in Italy before they came on the advice of relatives who'd already come,
Yeah.
actually at Ellis Island, or once they were already in Brooklyn, or who knows.
Yeah.
But it's a second half of a name.
Yeah. I am excited to have Amy Larocca. She is the author of How to Be Well, Navigating Our Self-Care Epidemic, One Dubious Cure at a Time. And you are my first fashion journalist on the podcast here today. But
Oh, I'm honored.
we don't talk tons about fashion on this podcast, as your book is very relevant to many listeners of the podcast who are struggling or caring for people living with chronic conditions like chronic
Mhm.
fatigue syndrome, fibromyalgia, POTS, Ehlers-Danlos syndrome, chronic idiopathic urticaria, all of which are under this invisible illness realm. What brought you, for those who haven't gotten a chance to read the book, and I read the book twice, so I got a chance to take a
Oh,
deep
wow.
dive
Thank you.
from the world of fashion into talking about wellness?
Well, I was covering fashion, and this my specific lens on that industry was always sort of about the cultural forces that led people to want things, that led certain desires in the marketplace. And that was always sort of what brought me to it more than the kind of items themselves or the silhouette or the cut. I was always interested in that kind of stuff, but it was more about the kind of cultural forces that led to why we want things, why we aspire to dress a certain way, look a certain way, why trends happen. And I started noticing a lot of trends were moving away from fashion and into this realm of wellness. Some of it had to do nothing with wellness at all, but with the democratization of the fashion industry itself, that it used to be very difficult to access fashion. And it was becoming increasingly, because of the democratization of everything that happened with the online revolution, fashion was becoming easier for a greater number of people to access. Now, if we know anything about fashion, we know that a huge amount of it relies on exclusivity, right? So the more people have it, the less the kind of upper echelons of fashion are going to want it. So the more people can see it, the more people that can live stream the product show the minute it's happening, the less the kind of real fashion people are going to think. The more people that can order it and have it overnighted to their house, the less delicious it feels, right? So this idea of wellness starts gaining strength. Of course, there's an idea that's always been there, right? Because there's such an emphasis on bodies and thinness and attractiveness. And those things are inextricably linked, right? We'll talk about that a lot, I think. So because the way we look is such a big part of the fashion industry. Fashion and wellness have always been really twinned, and the beauty industry is so connected to the fashion industry, of course. So they're always very tight. But so if you take all of that sort of witch's brew there, right? How we look, exclusivity, aspiration, you find that fashion and wellness are very, very, very connected. They're also both industries that are pitched to women. They're pitched to women that prey on not only our desires and our sort of fantasies, but also our insecurities, our aspirations.
Yeah. And so you get into a lot of that psychology behind that. And
Mm,
I think a lot of us, at least maybe a man, think a little bit about fashion, but not as in depth. And there's so much, and you get a chance to look at the why and the how, and then connecting that to the wellness. What is the wellness bridge that brought you from this? I got to write a book and bring this into more common understanding, because I think more people would benefit from learning sort of the inside scoop behind this great
sure.
book. Maybe there's already a great book on fashion that would sell.
There's a lot, right? I just got more and more interested, and I became a mother. I was having kids, and so much of it, for me, it was really like an inflection point, realizing that was definitely, obviously, I mean, this is a really obvious thing to say, but you start thinking about the world really differently when you have kids, and ideas about purity and what have you done, what were you doing that made your child sick, and what are you going to do to cure your child? And luckily, she's great, and she was able to overcome some of those challenges from the beginning. She's well now, but it really like brought a lot of these ideas about the kind of organic and what are the causes of illness, what are the sort of ideas of blame and purity that are placed upon mothers. So a lot of that was swirling around in my head, and you sort of match that up with like I remember reading just her morning routine, and it was just like everyone in the world knows what Gucci and Prada and Valentino are now, right? But like I had no idea what she was talking about. She was like, I have this ground pearl dust in a handmade copper cup, and then I wushu oil, and it was like this whole other language. And I was like, that's what fashion used to be. And I was like, this is fascinating. And combined with my own personal experience of becoming a mother, confronting the kind of pressures that are put on women as we become mothers, as we age. And it just was like a perfect brew. And I was like, this is just never ending. And I did a cover story for New York Magazine about it. And then I couldn't stop. I was like, wait, just kept going deeper and deeper and deeper. And then I was like, I don't really want to stop. I want to keep going. And then COVID happened. And I was like, oh my God, and now it's funny after I've written the book, we find ourselves as a country.
Oh, yeah. Got a episode that I just have to record going over that this rest of the week at the time of this recording. By the time it goes live, it'll be a few weeks down the road. But it sounds like that exclusivity, when you see that different and stylish clothing, and you makes you, And then, of course, if it's tied to somebody who looks good in it, and
Mhm.
you're having somebody who's eating something different with a different type of cup. I don't know how many people listening have copper cups that when they're drinking, and makes you wonder, maybe there's that exclusivity, maybe there's this secret, right?
What does it feel like to be that person? Is it better than being like boring old me? Maybe there's some superior way of existing.
You There's so many great things, and I recommend everybody to get the book and learn more about the details. And I can't go through all of these, but I brought up some questions that I think would be helpful for the listeners. You bring up Gwyneth Paltrow, a famous actress, and her company Goop in the book. For those of you who may not be keyed in on who this person is and what they're about, can you talk about her business and kind of use that as a model for understanding some of this whole wellness area?
Yeah, of course, she's an Oscar-winning actress who pivoted to start this enormous wellness company. And it's super controversial because so much of it is based on the idea of her privilege. And she has sort of taken a lot of pleasure in sort of selling pseudoscience, right? Like in selling things that are medically disproven, charging a lot of money for it, and kind of taking a very antagonistic role to being criticized for that. Saying, basically, it's a to you, or you're sort of uptight, or I'm just asking questions. And of course, some of that is true, right? Like she's doing more than asking questions, she's profiting. So she's not just asking questions, she's selling things. She's instilling fear in people. And she's, in some cases, I'm less convinced that it's dangerous. Like people made a big thing out of, that at one point she said something about putting a jade egg up your vagina or steaming your vagina or all these things. I'm not convinced that anyone really like did put the jade egg in their vagina or whatever. She definitely got, so it benefited her so greatly to the amount of attention and press she got for that. So I don't know that it's genuinely dangerous, but I think the idea, as we're seeing now, that the spread of pseudoscience and misinformation is a kind of destructive force in the culture. And she's definitely been a big part of that. She's definitely been a big part of the spreading of medical misinformation. And she also, it isn't so innocent because she's profiting off of it. So her sort of like, who me, I'm just having fun, mm, it's not so innocent. She made a lot of money off of it. So I think that, we do have to question that. And she also is a beautiful, rich celebrity. So she also embodies a lot of the qualities her customers are hoping to attain. And she embodies them whether or not she uses the products and practices that she is selling. So I think that's also crucial. Of course, I think the idea, whether made explicit or not, is that by buying into Goop, you're hopefully on the road to Gwynethdom. Yeah.
Yeah, it gets into that whole propaganda thing when you're going back
Yeah.
to, women and way back 100 years ago and saying you can smoke too and selling something
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
all of those things
I mean,
image. And it's how do we fall for these? I guess that's the big question as a
falling
thinking
for them
doctor.
forever. Yeah. And I think, like, don't be so hard on ourselves, right? Like, people have been following this forever. Like, we've always wanted the fountain of youth. And the medical roadshows have been traveling the country forever. And I mean, they used to come around and sell these different tonics. So at least then you're like, well, yeah, you felt great, right? At least you're like, well, I know why that worked. And I know why they left like villages feeling amazing in their wake and maybe not so great the next day, but like at least like the whole town was psyched, right? Like, so, they'd come and they'd have like one of them was called Jippo. And like the whole town would be like, that doctor, he was great. The whole town was up all night partying. They felt amazing after they had his elixir. Um, so at least you're like, okay, well, that's why that elixir worked. But so it's not, look, the search for eternal youth and to feel better, like it's as old as humanity. It's not like, I think people and women could be gentle with themselves about falling for it, right? Like, of course, we all want these answers, and of course, we all want the answers to be easy and obvious and attainable. And it's. I don't think we need to feel like so silly for falling for it.
Yeah, and that was the question I was going to be asking is, are these really just rehashes of similar things? Just as a quick fashion thing that popped in my mind, when I was young in the late 70s, early 80s, born in 71, that my mom said, "Oh, those bell bottoms, everything eventually comes back in fashion." Oh,
Oh
and
yeah, this morning I was like sending my daughter off to school, and she was like adjusting her jeans so that she could have the Calvin Klein band
oh
from
my
her
gosh,
under.
that's
Yeah,
accurate.
I know. And she was like, "How's my sag?" And I was like, "Oh my God!" Like, you know, and I was just like, "Oh yeah, like okay, like you got it," But
30
every
years from now, her kids are going to look at like, why did you wear that? Why were you? And
yeah,
as in
totally.
high school,
But I
growing
was
up,
like, "Oh my God!" I mean, she looked like I was like, it was like Marky Mark. It never occurred to me that I would be 49 years old, like sending my daughter off to school with like the Calvin Klein band visible with her like low rise jeans, but there I was. So yeah, look, that's what it is. And so yeah, like it's this is like we're less original than we'd like to think we are, right? Like we all want to live forever. We all want to look youthful. Trends come back around, but these sort of like the desire to look good, feel good, stay young, like it's not going anywhere. We're gonna all keep wanting that.
and in the world of medicine, of course, our job is to actually saving lives is really trying to extend a life, right? Somebody gets cured of their
Yeah.
leukemia at age 10 and wow, high years more historically than would have been deadly. And we can, push somebody off and extend it because we do have medical treatment. Tension, yes, of course. Why do we come to doctors for checkups? To find silent heart disease if it's hidden so you don't have the heart
Yeah.
attack like your dad did right at age 65. As I'm a clinical lipidologist as well as lifestyle medicine, pediatrics, and internal medicine. I have a special interest in these invisible illnesses. That's why we go. And yet there's this other wellness. And you just talk about what is the well woman. And of course, then there's women who have been told they're well, but aren't actually well in the sense of having an
Mhm.
invisible illness, like you talk about in the book. But what is this prototypical well woman for those who haven't read the book yet?
Yeah. Well, I think it's like there's an idea of like extra health, right? So being well doesn't necessarily mean you're not sick. It means something else. And it means that you're sort of calibrated. You've got this extra sort of tingly glow, right? Like you've got it all in balance. Like it's all working on some sort of superior plane. You've got it figured out. You're all in sync and you're all these words that you hear tossed around, you're optimized. right? Your fruit is organic, your everything is sort of operating on some higher functional plane. And that idea has been around for a long time. Like this guy called Halbert Dunn, who delivered a series of lectures that became the kind of foundational ideas that we still think of as the wellness industry. It really is. It's not the absence of disease. It's something above kind of everything working at a base level. It's feeling good. It's feeling optimized. And it's this constant search for what is it to be even better.
Yeah. And throughout the book, if you take a marketing 101 class, you're like,
Mm-hmm.
wait, this is the
Yeah,
pause. And a lot of the functional medicine world will use these terms, optimal health. And your doctor won't order these tests because there's not good evidence to support ordering all of these tests that
that's right.
don't affect outcomes. But it's like some secret that we know, or we are going to find the root of your cause. Well, that's actually what I try to do as a allopathic doctor who looks at the biopsychosocial, spiritual, environmental model of looking at things, right? And sometimes there's these discrete things, but often it's these other special things. You mention in here the kind of paradox, like we are in this world of wellness or functional medicine, integrative medicine, like we are trying to do what general medicine doesn't do, yet
Yeah,
have a huge business. This is the actually same playing card, but I would say in that the evidence-based medicine is actually trying to do evidence-based medicine that's supportive. Are there potential gray areas where somebody might get a sinoplasty from a advertised doctor on the radio that oversells the fact that flowing a balloon through their sinuses is so much easier? There's a little bit gray area in worlds of medicine, but in general, compare.
part of it
Well, the
too.
paradox, how they often say, "Oh, we're not like them. We're pure. We have this
Yeah,
purity."
we're
Yet,
pure. I
yeah,
mean, I sometimes, well, I resist the idea that the sort of functional medicine, I love the idea of functional medicine, right? Like when it's presented, you think, well, yes, of course, that's how all medicine should be practiced, right? Like in its pure form, that's the obvious answer. What I resist is how functional medicine has come to manifest in the kind of capitalist wellness economy. That's what I resist. So, what I don't like is how paired these kind of retail treatments have become with functional medicine. And what I don't like is going in to be evaluated by a functional medicine doctor who I leave having purchased God knows how many proprietary products that are these actually going to work? So I find it a real challenge to embrace, while I totally embrace the kind of doctrine of functional medicine, I find that the way it's being practiced, most commonly practiced right now within the context of the wellness industry, more often than not really troubling. I don't want protein powder. I don't want your proprietary blend of protein powder. I don't want 7 supplements in your packaging.
and that's the kind of the paradox. We're selling something different, yet we're prescribing something from a
Yeah.
company.
And I don't want you to tell me you just got me off of 7 prescription drugs and big pharma is corrupt and then push your protein powder and your B12 shot and your magnesium supplement. So I found that happened a lot. And I found myself being upsold too often in modern wellness functional medicine. So I learned about functional medicine and I was like, here we are. This is what we all want, right? Like we want to consider the whole patient. We want to embrace all modalities. We want to, think about root causes of disease. We want to consider lifestyle. We want to be open to all methods of treatment. This is great, right? We don't want to rule out anything, but I would add to that, and this is what I think is missing in the way most functional medicine, we would like to eliminate the profit motive.
And that's the snake oil.
That's not happening. Let's get rid of the snake oil. Because the hypocrisy that I found again and again and again is that the so-called wellness doctors, the so-called functional medicine practitioners were peddling as much snake oil as everyone else. And that's what was making it difficult for me. And I found again and again and again that it was hard not to get cynical when it felt like the slapping of the word wellness seemed to absolve all sins. It was like a marketing bonanza. So you tell me you don't want me on a prescription drug that, let's face it, has been double blind tested for years, has all sorts of evidence attached to it. But then you want me to have some sort of partially labeled, untested supplement in its place.
And one of the things in this whole world is I've thought a lot about it, and actually part of why I wrote my book is that in the world of these invisible illnesses, there weren't really good, I think, up-to-date, comprehensive books in talking about this. And many of them might be 80% good information. And then there's this
That's
20%
right.
that they're adding, and here I am.
By the way, I'm selling a
It,
supplement.
it,
As soon as it's like buy my supplement, I feel the fog come in and it just clouds everything that came before it, right?
and my goal is to help share information for the most stigmatized group of people. One of
That's
the
right.
things that happens that we do in this world of caring for people who are struggling with these chronic illnesses is that idea of a therapeutic alliance. How
Mm-hmm.
visits are very brief. Often in the world of these invisible illnesses, people are quickly, oh, great, she's here. I'm going to send her to all
Mm.
these doctors. The specialists can't figure it out, or they try these things. And I get a chance to say, tell me your story, write down your history going back. Doing that, now I can't spend 2 hours, but I can come back and do this over time and start to do education and explain these things. But one of the things that the wellness world, functional medicine, integrative, these clinics will spend 45 minutes, an hour, 2 hours building, in a sense, therapeutic alliance. And then there's that trust that you're understood. But then my brother is a part-time magician. The rabbit out of the hat, the distractor is over here. And then you're like, well, they have a therapeutic alliance. I build trust, and now I trust them. So when they say this will help, that's the sad part, right? Are
Yeah.
they? And the question maybe for you, as you investigated this, and maybe you don't know, do they really recognize that this is in a way partially a upsell, a scam, just as that woman going on trying those high-end yoga pants, thinking that their butt's going to look sexier? Do they it's sold by the fit yoga, 23-year-old, thing? Do they really think that that is going to make are there the people selling it really aware they're selling something that's somewhat of a borderline questionable thing? Or are they aware of that? Or do they just so believe that this is true?
Well, you believe penicillin can cure strep throat because you've seen the evidence. And I think it's mixed. Don't want to live in a world in which I think everyone is, a con man. So yeah, I think there's a lot of belief. I think there's a lot of hope. I don't have such a cynical take that I think everyone is a con man, but yeah, I think the truth probably lies somewhere in the middle, you know? Everyone wants to believe that these things help.
And sometimes that lifestyle that goes along with it
Yeah.
does have an impact.
I think it's often mostly the lifestyle, right? Like, I think that what you realize is in a country like ours, where the sort of gap between what it means to have access to good health and no access to healthcare is just growing and growing and growing and widening and widening and widening. And the gap between rich and poor just gets bigger and bigger. And what that means, what it means to be rich, what it means to be poor in America, that those are actually what it means to be well and unwell. I mean, that's what it means to be well and unwell. It's just what it means to be rich. And so, these things that are offered, the supplements, the this, the that, they're kind of just frosting.
Yeah, like I guess in the world of fashion, looking at this, if you got a beautiful woman like Gwyneth Paltrow or whatever, you can make them
They're gonna
look
look
good.
good.
You can look good
Yeah,
on a lot of just
not
ads.
hard.
Oh, go to the
Yeah,
Kohl's department store.
you're gonna look pretty good.
You got
Yeah.
somebody who needs some healthier lifestyle. It's going to be harder
I
to.
know a lot of times, like when I was on book tour, people would say, like, I don't know, what do you think, yoga or Pilates? And I would just, my answer was always, look, if you're choosing between yoga and Pilates, I'm gonna say you're good.
Yeah,
If you're in a position to make that choice, you probably are.
you talk about efforts for people who have tried to debunk some of these things in your book. Can you talk about what the impact of people trying to
Well, the
debunk
thing
this?
that's funny is like debunking things doesn't matter. Like, I think the desire to believe is greater than the evidence of something having been debunked. One of the great examples of that is Blueprint Cleanse, which is a really popular juice cleanse, maybe like 15 years ago or so in New York. And you would pick up your little cooler of juices, and then it sort of spawned a world of juice cleanses. And you didn't eat any solid food. And we all know that juice is not particularly healthy, that there's no fiber, that, it's high in sugar. It's not good for your body to just stop eating solid food. It's not good for your metabolism. It's not good for your blood sugar. It's just not very good for you. It's good for a quick weight loss, and that's probably it. It's not healthy. So, but it was really popular. So I was interviewing the founders of the Blueprint Cleanse, and it was such a phenomenon. I can't even describe. All the girls on the subway with their little Blueprint coolers going off to work, interviewing the founders of the Blueprint Cleanse. And they were like, we would always get so worried because, of course, there were these articles all the time around the time that these juice cleanses were really popular that would appear in really credible news outlets, Wall Street Journal and New York Times. And they sort of have these very highly Ivy League credentialed medical school professors and doctors saying this is really bad for you, and let me explain why. And they would explain why juice cleanses were bad and why they were dangerous. And they'd say, oh God, we're gonna have a terrible week, no one's gonna order a cleanse this week. And then they would have like a banner week, like the press would just only benefit them. It's slightly impossible to debunk anything that's gonna like help you lose weight. Like, I think the hair loss might be slowing Ozempic sales right now, but maybe not. Weight loss is still ultimately the goal. But the desire to believe in these quick cures is so much bigger than the hope, the want, it's sort of impossible to debunk them. I mean, if you just look at the face cream aisle of your local Walgreens, when we all know that the only accurately named face cream in the world was the one that was called Hope in a Jar,
There's so much of that, like you say, that marketing. One of the things I wondered as I'm reading through your book a couple times, okay, how much of this was from a serious hope for personal health, that this would help in some way for something you didn't, I don't think, talk about any chronic invisible illness that you have, and how much of it was kind of really this investigative journalistic kind of thing? Because I have to say, when I'm reading through this, and not, I have a huge heart for people who are struggling with invisible illnesses, but then reading through this, I can't help to smile and laugh at myself, laugh as I'm going along. But can you talk about
It's
those?
both. It's always both, right? Like, isn't that the only way to go through life, right? To try and have a huge heart and then also have a sense of humor. For me, I mean, that's the only way to get through any of it. It's funny. It's also serious, and I mean, that's my only way of coping with the world. So, is to see that it's both funny and serious, and it's just both.
You went through these clinics, you do a colon cleanse and
Oh,
other things. Like, were you
horrible! It's so
seriously
gross.
trying to like do something in health, or was it like, all right, I'm going to write a book?
I know it's both. I mean, I don't know what to tell you except that it's both. Like,
Oh,
I
okay.
know it's ridiculous. I know that I'm extraordinarily privileged in order to be able to even be doing this. But then, a lot of it is also real. With going for a colonic, totally ridiculous. Yeah, it's totally ridiculous. Nobody needs to be garden hosed out the back. It's absurd. But the parts about the way people looked at me when my daughter was born, and knowing how many women think I caused my daughter's illness by not being sort of organic enough is real. I mean, that's all very real. And, it's both funny and it's really dark too. It's really like the way women are blamed is so upsetting and so hurtful and so dark. And, that the things that drive us to do these absurd things are really painful, right? That we're like sort of chronically miserable with our bodies. We're chronically guilty and responsible for the health of our families and our children, and we're always falling short. Like, that's really dark and it's really wrong. It's also really silly and absurd. And the only way I know how to get through it is to find the humor in it and to also take it seriously.
Yeah. You talk about exploitation some in the book, and I think of people who've been duped by, a couple of patients over the years who've been duped by like a publisher clearinghouse scam where they're sending
Oh,
hard
yeah.
money after this mirage, but when you tell them it's a scam, they're actually convinced that it's real. It
Oh,
happens,
yeah.
someone is sucked into this belief and it's confronted that they have been exploited.
I don't care. No, I don't. Yeah, I still will be like, like last year I like had the flu and both my kids got the flu. So I got flu A and flu B and pneumonia during the flu season last year, and it was just the worst. And I was on the phone with my friend and she's like, "Well, did you get the flu? I feel like everyone got the flu this year. The flu shot totally, it was the wrong strain." And she was like, "No, because I'm taking bovine colostrum." And I was like, "Bovine colostrum? I need to take bovine colostrum." And like, that's disgusting. Like a powder of cow colostrum? That's disgusting. I don't want to take, and also like, is that going to stop me getting the flu? It's not. But I was like ordering bovine colostrum. And then like, in my flu-like state when I was like sort of, banging on the keyboard, I'd inadvertently signed up for the subscription one. So this bovine colostrum kept like arriving at my house. I didn't mean to subscribe. It was like one moment of weakness. I had the flu. And, so it's like, yes, we'll all do it again and again and again. Like, and it's fine. It's
Yeah.
okay. It's not.
That just reminds me, recently, I think it was at our clinic, the nurses were sharing how a patient had brought in some kind of bakery item, and then she mentioned, "Oh, and I made like, what were the ingredients? Oh, I had my own breast milk." And they're just like, "Oh." It's like, yeah, speaking of colostrum, and it's like, "Oh, thank
Yeah.
you very much."
No.
Like,
No, I mean, a friend of mine was visited by someone who was like, "Oh, I really always really like admired your work and I didn't know what to bring you. So I made you this soap from my breast milk."
oh, so it's happening. It's out there, okay? I'm not.
Yeah. And I was like, "Were you supposed to then go like wash with her breast?" Like, yeah, no, I mean, it's out there.
So, kind of a transition, and this is a theme that you talk about quite a bit in the book, and in at least one or two chapters. But it reminds me, we talk about. I think you mentioned maybe a secular atheist, or talk about religion and faith and spirituality, and it reminded me of the quote, this kind of famous quote by David Foster Wallace, who's not with us anymore. But I'm going to just read it here. He says, "But there's something else that's true in the day-to-day trenches of adult life. There is actually no such thing as atheism. There is always no such thing as worshiping worships. The only choice we get is what to worship, and an outstanding reason for choosing some sort of God or spiritual type thing to worship, whether it be Jesus Christ or Yahweh, the Wiccan mother goddess. The four noble truths or some infrangible set of ethical principles is that pretty much anything else you worship will eat you alive. If you worship money and things, if they are where you tap your real meaning in life, then you will never have enough, never feel like you have enough. Worship your own body and beauty and sexual allure, and you will always feel ugly. And when time and age start showing, you will die a million deaths before they finally plant you." On one level, we all know this stuff already. It's been codified as myths, proverbs, cliches, epigrams, parables, the skeleton of every great story. The trick is keeping the truth up front in the daily consciousness. Worship power, you will feel weak and afraid, and you will need more power over time to keep that fear at bay. Worship your intellect, being seen as smart, and you'll be stupid or a fraud, always on the verge of finding out. And so it kind of, this is in a sense
I've
thing
never read.
is,
Where is that? Where does that appear? Where does
you have not
what
heard, this
larger
is the
text
first
is
time
that
you've
in?
heard this? Yeah.
Yeah.
Have you heard of David? Can send it to you. It's pretty out there,
Cute.
pretty
I
famous.
would love that.
Yeah, it's David Foster Wallace. He was a professor out east. I forget which college it was, but it's kind of reminding me of that, all of the stuff you talk about spirituality in the
Yeah.
book, where there is that, and you obviously know there's this, yes, but our bodies are wearing down, and we're trying to keep that allure, as you talk about, as we're similar age, and recognize there, where's that golden spot in your 23 to 35-year-old,
Yeah.
age
Well,
range.
I just hated listening to all of these. I kept realizing that so much of what we are told as like a woman is like you have to get back, like you have to get yourself back. And it was always like, I first started noticing it when I was pregnant, and then when I had kids, and now that I'm like approaching 50, it's like the perimenopause and menopause stuff. It's like we're gonna get you back. We're gonna get you back. And I'm like, well, what? I felt really strongly after I had kids, like there's no going back. Like that is done. Like that body, that mind, like that whole version of me, like it's not me that's gone, but like there's this whole other set of stuff, and it's not really possible or feasible. And why is it so important? It doesn't seem fair to try and spend all my time like clawing back. Like, can't we just say like, can we just like move forward? And it's always like get you back, get you back, get you back. And now it's the same thing as I approach 50, like, let's get you back, let's get you back, let's get you back. And it's like, what an odd way to live life, right? This notion that we're always trying to claw back something that is past. And it seems like a really dangerous and unproductive way to live. Like, you're just always going to fail. You're always going to fail. You're always going to feel like you're failing. Not possible.
Well, yeah, and it depends on what aspect we're talking about in the
Mhm.
world of healthcare, for example. If somebody can be doing a healthy lifestyle, we could maybe get to the pack where somebody doesn't need their high blood pressure med if they can do healthy diet and exercise.
Sure.
But at the same point, I have given up since age 40 of ever dunking a basketball again. I just realized that
That's fine. That's
that's
great.
out of the range where I will, I can, and now as I'm getting older, when I see kids bouncing and running and jumping and doing cartwheels, when I was doing all of those things in the yard and playing, and the older people are like, wow, look at all that agility. And now I'm like, oh, now I know what those parents sitting on those chairs outside were looking
Yeah.
at when people were at the park. Why were they, Grandma, what's the big deal? Why you should get out here and run around and jump. It's
Yeah.
not hard to do this.
Yeah, totally. It's just jumping. What's the big deal? Just jumping.
Yeah. One of the topics you talk about, and this is kind of the buzzword too in the book, is the word toxicity. How does the
Mhm.
wellness world exploit others with this idea?
And it's such a vague term, right? Like, what does it even mean that something is toxic? Like, you're always being told everything is toxic. Like, the relationship is toxic, the dairy is toxic, the thoughts, the feelings, the heavy metals, and it's, there's no question that there are toxic elements, microplastics or whatever in our modern environment. There is toxicity. But what's less clear is what the health implications of that toxicity are and what detoxing actually consists of and means. And, there's all sorts of problematic and kind of racist and nationalistic implications of implying that things are toxic that I think become more and more relevant lately. And I think you're sold because the world is unknowable and the world is scary and the world is permanently, constantly changing. You're sold this idea that you can control some of these uncontrollable elements by washing your face with a certain face wash or breathing in a certain way or withholding a certain food group. And of course, those aren't really effective tools against the actual toxicity of the modern world, but they offer a kind of band-aid or sensation of control in a really uncontrollable situation.
Yeah, it's marketed heavily into the functional medicine world where we got
Yeah.
toxins, we have to find this, we got to have,
Mm-hmm.
and the doctor doesn't necessarily check that. We do check certain things like lead levels and stuff, but lot of the book is talking about women, and many women suffer with invisible illnesses at higher rates as well. But
Hmm.
one area that's dominated by men, and you have a chapter on this, is the whole biohacking
Mm.
world. And I found that super interesting that you had that, because you listen to, in the world of podcasting, you search in these areas and they're not dominated by people like myself who are physicians trying to just not sell you anything and give it an evidence comprehensive approach to things. What is this world of biohacking?
Oh, the world of biohacking is basically sort of using evidence and using data to improve outcomes. So it can be anything as sort of simple as like stepping on a scale and saying, this is my weight. If I adjust, if I drink coffee in the morning, do I see a change in outcomes? You know, you can do all these if you track it. A lot of the founders of the biohacking movement come out of Silicon Valley, and they were hackers, and that's sort of how the name came. And they see systems, and they see systems as infinitely provable and infinitely fixable and infinitely hackable. And therefore, the human body is just another system to be hacked and perfected. And the ultimate sort of end point of biohacking, of course, is ending death. And the really hardcore biohackers do describe death.
Yeah. And again, not using the most evidence based, often anecdotal, personal based, trying to do that. Often very exclusive people that are spending a lot of their own money to try to engineer. And you mentioned this in the book, like, I don't know if I want to live forever. You know, eventually our body does
Yeah.
slowly wind down, and having that, yet we have this eternal spirit to, we don't, uh, is there something more? I'm a lifestyle medicine physician as well as a pediatrician. Have you ever heard of the specialty or area of lifestyle medicine?
I don't know that I have heard that
So,
term.
lifestyle medicine is what you would say, well, the functional medicine at its core is good.
Hmm.
What it's talking about is the role of non-medication management and non-supplement management, looking at the impact of lifestyle on chronic health issues, looking at the role of diet, exercise, stress management, healthy sleep, avoiding risky substances, and having good social contacts, and evidence-based understanding, and that impacts so much of chronic health issues, when we're trying to do that. But the part of that is, and I've had patients who come to see me at times and they're like, oh, you're a lifestyle medicine doctor. And then they start talking about how they're going to an energy healer and figuring I'm all in on energy healing. I'm like, it's American College of Lifestyle Medicine. It's been around a bit. I think functional medicine is out there on, LinkedIn and social media because they're sane lifestyle medicine, and then they're selling you these supplements down the stream. It's kind of a, like you say, that upsell.
Yeah.
And the challenge is like, well, and that's like, it is very important. And how do you, stay in business if you're not selling supplements, but yet just giving good care? And I think I guess there's a predatory aspect when people may be taking advantage of that. And, in the world of lifestyle medicine, it's more that fiduciary responsibility. We're just here to offer evidence-based support you on these challenging journeys. And you may be in a toxic, meaning a high stress relationship, but how can we help support? How can we reframe this? And it's actually a big part of what I do in my practice, is just minus the supplements, unless you're vegan, you need B12, and otherwise all of the other.
Yeah.
Thoughts on that, or anything else that we didn't talk about that you think you'd like to talk about, or anything?
No, I think we covered the ground.
Awesome. Well, thanks again for having.
Thank you for having me.
Yeah, and encourage everybody to check it out, because it's nice to have the inside scoop of this. This is the third of a three-part interview I've been doing on this themes of understanding the wellness, behind the secrets, understanding this. And it's so important because so many people who are living with these chronic invisible illnesses, like many of those celebrities that you mentioned in your book, are the patients I treat every day. Interestingly, a lot of the work I do works with people who are neurodivergent, and they have higher rates of these chronic invisible illnesses. Their brain
Mhm.
processes information differently. So they might be autistic or have ADHD and have these at much higher rates. So a lot of these are double-edged swords. Many of them are celebrities who are very creative and very energetic, but then stress hits, life hits. Suddenly life gets complicated, stressed out. How can I decompress and make money?
Yeah, of course.
All righty.
Thank you very much.
Thank you very much.
Great meeting you, and thank you so much.